You're listening to X-Posure on XFM. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Manic Street Preachers with Don't Be Evil from the last album, Postcards from a Young Man, 2010. And I'm very pleased to say that, as you know, the Manics are back with a brand new record. Rewind the Film, it's out this week. I'm going to play you the whole thing tonight with two of the band talking us through it track by track. James and Nicky, welcome back to XFM.
Oh, it's good to be back, John. Hello.
It's great to see you. Great to have you here. And the new album is really exciting, really different. And I remember, sometimes I think I'm almost following your lives via the media of print and read these interviews over different points. And at one point, I seem to remember reading an interview with you saying, people won't believe this new record that we started to work on. We were going to give ourselves a bit of a break, but instead we're going to do something completely different and reinvent ourselves, in effect. I'm sure you didn't use that word. It's far too cliched a phrase. But
you probably did.
But it seemed to have been going through your mind that after National Treasures, after that release, after that tour, you'd kind of drawn a line between the past and the future.
Well, I think we kind of talked ourselves into a bit of a cul-de-sac because
so much theorising beforehand.
Because The Wire had said it was the last great shot of mass communication, so something different had to come after anyway. But the kind of, I think the lyrics had led us, down this path of just everything just being a bit more gentle and a bit more acoustic, and it just seemed to happen so naturally. So it wasn't us kind of like, going off to, some kind of remote village in the outback of the Amazon forest and trying to reinvent ourselves or find a different version of ourselves. It really did come quite naturally.
But I think when we walked off stage at the National Treasures gig, when we did those 38 songs, apart from like severe cramp and dehydration and everything, it was a feeling that some of those songs just maybe we can't play again. It's such a state of mind playing songs off, be it something like Faster off the Holy Bible. You have to really feel it. And maybe when you get in the mid-40s, we didn't want to go on stage and fake it anymore, which naturally fed into the feeling of Rewind the Film, really.
It's kind of like not being able to do Hamlet when you're 50.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this appetite for work, though, doesn't seem to go away, because it seems that you keep saying to people, right, we're going to do this, and then there'll be a break, and we're going to do something else, but it seems to come back.
I mean, kind of... Our real kind of statement that we did make was that we weren't going to be playing Britain for kind of 2 years, and we'll probably break that embargo by a couple of months or so. So that was our main intention, not to play in Britain for quite a while, because we're very aware that this was going to be our 11th studio album, and I think it's just so easy to kind of keep making music or attempt to make music, because when you're in the bubble of the studio, especially our studio in Cardiff, you kind of don't feel the pressure, you don't feel as if anybody's interrupting with your flow, man. And it's still one of the greatest parts of being in a band, actually, writing a song, doing a demo, and then realising the demo is probably the master track because it sounds great already. They're the greatest and easiest parts of being in a band.
Yeah. And so was there an agenda then, musically, when you went to Faster and hung out there? I'm picturing you for the whole of 2012. You walk off stage at the O2 Arena after the National Treasure show and, celebrate Christmas in whatever way you like to do that. And then, January comes and you think, right, let's go down the road and get in the studio again.
Well, initially, James had a young kid in, was it November?
November, yeah.
So, initially I was going down the studio on my own. And I did quite a few sort of demos on my own. This album's been quite fractured to record because we all got young families, but we're very trusted in each other that we can all come up with pretty decent demos. And then all of a sudden around February we sort of reconvened, and I sort of, in my Stalinist way, said it has to be 70 songs of hatred and failure. We have to get one more than the Magnetic Fields, which was 69.
Which me and Sean just looked at each other.
Here he goes again. But I thought we'd have to, at the very least, do a white album. Then it became a pattern in the ways where we had this very kind of soulful, acoustic, brass-tinged, delicate album, and something very nasty, spiky, post-punk, which we'll release next year. So that pattern of the ways was, like Jim said, everything was actually pretty natural. I don't think we had to force anything, because the lyrical themes as well were very separate.
I mean, kind of, Nick was giving me lyrics, like Selling Welsh Heart. which immediately, you know, kind of, I associate a song like that with a kind of, with a country song, like, you know, Yacht in Heart or something. You know, that's the way my literal brain works sometimes. So it just led me down that kind of path kind of thing. So kind of, it really was the lyrics that started, you know, kind of setting things in stone, you know, and that's kind of always been the way for us, to be honest.
What lyrics lead to a musical response?
Lyrics do lead to a musical response, and everything follows from that, you know. So kind of, it would have just been, I can't put the motorcycle riff over the top of, you know, Sullen Welsh Heart, or I can't put the faster solo over the top of something like Three Ways to See Despair, you know. It would have been a mismatch.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, February 2012 then, statements were made. Then
I put a big board up saying this is the manifesto for this week.
Do you remember Hong Kong Fooey's cat?
Yes.
Where kind of, I'm going to go and get my Hong Kong book of Kung Fu tricks. And he'd do his magic spell wrong, and his cat was called Spot, but he had stripes. We'd just go, that's me and Sean all the time.
That is the best ever.
But then the material made you realise that actually this is going to go in a different way. And then how long did you spend working on this record? For the rest of the year? Or when you said it was fractured, obviously you've got different commitments, different obligations.
It has been fractured. Sometimes I've been playing drums, James has been playing bass, Sean is programming stuff and playing tons of trumpet. I'm singing acoustic. So it's been... But I think it got to a point where we sifted out all the mediocre stuff and got to, say, 10 or 12 tracks, which we were really happy with. And then sort of started the process of re-recording or re-editing or messing with, or just keeping the masters. It's hard to pin down because we've been doing 2 albums at the same time. It's hard to pin down where we've actually worked in blocks because it hasn't really panned out like that. It's been, you know...
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just our adult brains at our age or the fact that...
I suppose we can try and imagine what the first song that was written for the record was, which was...
Run Out of Fantasy.
It was Run Out of Fantasy, or it might have been As Holy as Soil.
Yes, true.
So they were the 2 first songs that were written for the record. So that gives you an idea of how everything just started kind of leading up from there. But like, you know, Nick said, you know, at one point, you know, I came in the studio and he asked me to play bass on something, and there was drums on it, there was guitars on it, there was a vocal on it. I was like, oh, Sean's been in, is he? He's like, no, I did the drums. It's like, you know, you play the guitar and you've obviously sung in it, so I put the bass in it. So that was For Lonely Roads. And then, you know, kind of like, you know, something like Manic was something I started in just after my child was born, which is just a little gentle blues thing. And then it turned into this theremin instrumental kind of thing. So it's kind of...
I mean, then the band,
track of it.
We were due to go to Berlin to Hansa to record, and I didn't even end up going because my dad was in hospital, my wife was in hospital, I was snowed in, it was just a terrible time. But it didn't really matter because we were all... I actually text James the lyrics for Builder of Routine.
And that was the height of technology for me. I got a song by text, I can't believe it.
Excellent, this is the modern way.
Yeah.
And when was Berlin then? Was that the last part of the recording
January
process?
This year.
January,
Yeah,
it was the last part. Yeah. And I was gutted because I'd arranged this great hotel, little walk to the studio. I'd always wanted to record in Hansa and I couldn't get there. But they enjoyed themselves. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and
while I was suffering.
They're your brothers. You can live through them.
I did completely. As I endlessly wiped up sick from a norovirus, rampaging through the family.
Wow. Gosh. And on that note, we'll move into the new record. We're going to play the whole thing tonight. Rewind the film in its entirety with James and Nicky talking us through it track by track. The first track, This Sullen Welsh Heart, is on the way next. You cannot afford to miss it. It is This Sullen Welsh Heart. Manic Street Preachers on X-Posure XFM. It's the opening track to the brand new album, Rewind the Film. And it's such a great opening number, I think, in that it seems to... it's almost like opening the page of a book, and you get the first kind of scene and get an idea of where this band are at, in a way. That's the way
a beautiful way of describing it, John.
Well, you know, because this album seems to be a lot about taking stock about your lives, about you as people, and kind of weighing things up, both positively and negatively. And this seems a really good way of starting that conversation.
And I think we're kind of known for really kind of full out big opening tracks, something, you know, like the title track of Send Away the Tigers or 1985, we usually come up, this is the quietest, most delicate kind of start to an album, which we felt was really important to have just that little solo acoustic pick in, and then Lucy Rose comes in with this really kind of cracked vocal that fits so well with James's, and it was saying there's some key lines in that song, you know, I can't fight this war anymore, which kind of do feel like as a band maybe there's not much left in the tank in terms of being the opposite of everything all the time. So it was giving in to our emotions and just questioning our own principles as people and as a band, really.
I think it was kind of nice as well because, there's only this one guitar, there was my vocal and there was a Hammond organ on the track. And I just had the sense that my vocal wasn't enough. And I thought somebody else's voice might give sense to the despair. It might give a sense of calm to the despair. It might tell you that kind of in the morning, the wipeout won't be here, the birds are still going to be singing. And it was Nick's idea to go for Lucy Rose. And again, as with every person that sang on the track, they all did their tracks in 3 takes flat, which was kind of depressing for me. usually I take 4 or 5. So it was Nick's call to get Lucy Rose, and I said I wanted it to be like when Leonard Cohen used to use lots of female backing vocalists on his tracks, especially in the early 70s, and it just worked immediately, and she did seem to kind of make sense of the despair and just calm it down a bit.
Yeah, and her voice sounds lovely. And I was interested to hear her on a track called This Sullen Welsh Heart, particularly knowing that Kate Le Bon features later on the album, and wondered whether there was any quandary about, can we allow an English Rose, for want of a better description, to be on this song that ties into our very essence?
Not from us. I mean, I guess for her, it may be, but, we're just looking for the texture of her voice, actually. That sort of tracked sound is just so... whereas Kate, we were looking for something very kind of pure and almost folky. It's hard to describe Kate's voice, I guess, but it's very kind of glacial. Whereas Lucy's was more that fractured, kind of cracked thing. But it's a good point. But, but we had no problems with that.
Yeah. You're not Zionists.
We're open to everything.
You're open to the world.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, it's good.
But I just wanted I finished that lyric off in a hotel room in South Korea, which I tend to do a lot with my songs, that the peace of a hotel room somewhere just always gives me a massive amount of inspiration, or even the hotel stationery. And it's kind of sullen in the way that Dylan Thomas used the word sullen. How sullen is thou art? That kind of dramatic, over-the-top Welsh melancholic, it's all black, it's all black. And I was just staring out at the sky, actually feeling really contented in my sadness, which I think is a particular Welsh thing, that we take a kind of inward comfort in uplifting heartbreak. And that's what I tried to transfer onto the lyric.
It sounds beautiful, I think, and it's a really nice aspect to the Manics Through Preachers. I mean, this acoustic guitar, it seems as with this record you've been able to embrace aspects of your musicality that you haven't been able to before, because I know you listen to a lot of different kinds of music and absorb a lot of different things, but it hasn't always fed back into what Manics Through Preachers do.
No, you're right.
I think there've been flashes of it, like, on This Is My Truth, there's a song called My Little Empire, and then kind of like, also there is, Black Dog on My Shoulder. But kind of, I think we've always almost kind of had a sense of shyness about showing sensitivity sometimes, kind of thing. I wouldn't call it a macho bluster or kind of like, some kind of retro male 70s kind of mindset, but I think we've always been tiny bit shy about it, definitely.
And to be honest, we went through so much kind of naked, raw emotion with Richey and everything. We always come across as kind of easy and polite and sport fans and all that, when the truth is, there's a lot of kind of misery that's passed through us in the last 22 years. But it's not easy just to to keep banging on about that, because it was too much at times.
I think it was kind of easy to go down the routes that we were with the more acoustic nature of the record, because, you know, we weren't abstractly and obliquely talking about the tiger's teardrop or something. You know, songs that can be immediately synced to a product kind of thing. They were about very real things about, just still being a rock and roll band at the age of 44 and losing parts of your memory and culture and people around you. You know, they were about very real things. They weren't about relationships, and they weren't about, you know, kind of keep your head up and stuff like that, you know.
You are beautiful. Don't care what anyone says. You're beautiful.
Thanks, Nicky. I'll take that as a personal compliment. So from the darkness of this sullen Welsh heart to Show Me the Wonder and a yearning for hope, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one sort of kind of musically uplifting. I guess you could say is sort of more traditionally Manics, although there's no electric guitar on there. I guess the brass gives it that zip. Lyrically, it is that. I thought it was a really important lyric to say that you just can't explain certain things. That one thing we've learned over the last 25 years, that you just cannot scientifically or religiously describe how certain things happen, be it the magic of a song or of people together or of a genius footballer or an amazing haircut like Keith Richards. You know, you can't copy it, you can't bottle it. And I kind of just get sick of these opposing factions constantly trying to justify and explain every aspect of your life. Some things you just have to wallow in the alchemy of the unexplainable. Yeah, that seems fair enough. I heard an interview with Mike Batt from the man who wrote...
Where are you going with this?
Yeah, the Wombles theme and many other things. Apparently his mother was such an optimist that she'd always turn to him and they were doing various different things. She said, "Are we lucky? Are we lucky?" And listening to Show Me the Wonder, I see a connection in the sense that it's almost, even though some of the words are kind of, is it too much to ask to disbelieve in everything? But at the same time, you're thinking, well, it'd be good to be able to be joyful and hopeful and have some kind of belief. It also ties in with other information that's been coming through in the news recently that atheists are smarter, officially, statistics show, but people with strong faith are healthier. All these different... Which side do you want to be on?
I have no inclination to fight either side of that battle. Kind of like, we know that religion has led to so much untold horror, and we know it's led to
as atheism.
As atheism, science kind of created, Agent Orange. It created nuclear bombs. It created Coca-Cola franchises to destroy rivers in India. So kind of, why would you ever want to be stuck in the middle of those two factions arguing against each other?
It's just more of a sense of existentialism with us, that you kind of, we've learned that you sort of create your own vague moral framework, and you sort of navigate and try to do as little harm as you can, but that's about as far as you can hope for. Apart from that, just kind of when a moment hits you that gives you great joy or uplift or anything, I'd rather just not have it explained to me. I'd rather just feel it.
Yeah. Well, I think that is really summed up just by the horn line of this song. In a way, you just hear that and you immediately feel uplifted. And here it is: Show Me the Wonder, Manic Street Preachers, X-Posure, XFM. It is Manic Street Preachers with Rewind the Film. It was our first taste of the brand new album of the same title, which is out this week, and getting an X-Posure album playback treatment tonight with James and Nicky from the band talking us through it track by track. And this was such a lovely surprise to hear this as the first taste of the album, because this sounds wrong, because James doesn't start singing till 3 minutes in, I was going to say. But it was just like, where is he? No, and Richard does the main bit of singing at the start.
Well, and I've said it before, he brings the man to the Manics, look, I mean, the story of this song is just really, it kind of started out, it was one of the last songs to be written for the album, strangely.
It's pretty emblematic in terms of the fractured nature, isn't it?
It was. I mean, kind of, it started out where Nick had wrote lyrics to the main top-line melody of a David Axelrod song called Little Girl Lost.
Which is an instrumental.
So it was an instrumental, and he'd written lyrics over the top of it, and he'd done that in the studio. And so therefore we had to create the other half of the song, which is when I start singing. And that's a bit of our love influence coming out when the band really kick in when I sing. So we kind of matched our half of the song up with the David Axelrod kind of song. And then we had to replay every note of the David Axelrod kind of part of the song because, we just, we would have probably ended up paying something like 30 grand to use a sample or something. And it's kind of, Nick was originally singing on Rewind the Film, and it was brilliant. It had his Catherine Hepburn stroke Marky Smith kind of vulnerability to it. But I did want to try, Richard Hawley on it. I did, and so it was probably, I was a bit pushy about pushing his vocals off this track.
I was quite happy to be pushed.
And I just instinctively knew that, old Dickie Hawley, he would do it perfectly kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I know him. He's one of the few musicians that I kind of know. And, of course, he just came down the studio and he had a bad back at the time. But he added a bit of Hawaiian guitar on the intro. And he just sung it in 3 takes. And usually you've got a take sheet in the studio where you're ticking or putting crosses against the lines, and literally had 3 takes, and it was all ticks bar 2 lines out of 3 takes, which kind of just, I felt like, I wanted to put him off so he could just do one bad take for my morale. And it just kind of came together accidentally, really. It just seemed to keep creeping up on us and just seemed to kind of arrive perfect, really.
Every time we added an element, it just got better. Didn't there? From a scratchy little demo of me singing over the top of literally just cutting the David Axelrod instrumental in half. Then it just got James added the part, then Hawley, then we re-recorded everything, and then some string. It just got better and better, and it's the first kind of really long song we've done in quite a while. For
the want of a better word, it's kind of progressive in its own way.
Yeah, it's got a bit of prog in there.
It has got a bit of prog,
but that's no bad thing.
No.
And at the same time, I think Hawley adds a kind of Cash element to it. The way he sings on this song, it sounds, a bit like Johnny Cash. It reminds me of Hurt when Johnny Cash did.
Oh God, he's a man after my own heart. Because that's one of my favourite vocal performances of all time. I think it's just you can hear the heartbreak, and we were looking for that just cinematic kind of sadness. And it was a great call by James, and hopefully Mr. Hawley can join us live on a couple of shows. It'd be good because we're struggling with this album, with duets and everything. There's a lot of gaps to fill.
Tricky business. But that would be brilliant if some of the guests could feature on the record. I mean, I'd like to see this album played live, from start to finish. I think it would be a great thing to do.
I'd like to be able to play it.
Yep.
if I could be bothered to learn it.
Relearn it.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Builder of Routines is the next song. And what can you tell us about this? I know that Sean has a French horn solo on this.
He does, yeah. I mean, this January of this year, we had we were booked in to do a session over in Berlin in Hansa Studios with Alex Silva, who was the engineer on the Holy Bible. He's a Welsh Italian from Cardiff. We've all stayed friends with him. He's a great guy, and he lives in Berlin. So we were off over there to do a session with him. And as Nick talked about earlier, Nick didn't actually make it on the plane to get over there, and for various reasons. So after a week, me and Sean had got through a lot of work, and then I knew that we need another song to work on. And so I was felt guilty because I was asking Nick to text me lyrics of a lyric that he had at home whilst his father and his wife were kind of ill, kind of thing, and they had norovirus in the house, and I was like bugging him, "Oh, come on, just text me a lyric. Come on." And so it was our first ever song written by text, which sounds so old-fashioned now, really, doesn't it? Because I haven't got a laptop, so he couldn't email it to me or anything. And it kind of disturbs me a bit, this song. I don't know why, but it just does.
It's a very strange little ditty. It's really about building any kind of semblance of routine when you're amidst total chaos. You read descriptions even from Second World War, First World War, where even out of the misery of the darkest trenches, somehow you're kind of trying to, human beings like to forge some kind of routine. And in my own way, I was trying to, I didn't even write it down on paper. I literally wrote it on the phone, which I'm never done before. But when James was bugging me a bit, and I literally sat down that night after I cleared everyone and put everyone to bed and just kind of came flowing out. And I was really intrigued to see what they would come up with. It's just a really mysterious little, really short soundscape. And then that amazing sort of French horn solo from Sean, which again gives that bit of melancholic uplift, sort of God only knows, sort of Beach Boys feel to it.
And there was an old Celeste in the studio, which is a really old instrument, quite a spooky instrument, kind of thing you hear in the background of Bagpuss and kind of the Moomins and all that kind of stuff. And Sean had kind of written the main riff, the main melody of the chorus on that. So it was just up to me to do the verse and the kind of the verse in the middle section. And it was just...
James was quite disturbed by the line, "I've laminated all of my skin," I think.
Just kind of reminds me of
Hannibal Lecter.
From a Hannibal Lecter kind of novel. You know, it's just kind of cellophane, man.
It is an arresting image, I must say. But it's interesting that, you know, part of this album is about coming to terms with growing older, coming to terms with what you've done in your lives, and even within Builder of Routine, some of the lyrics refer directly to episodes, in effect, that have been, you know, become part of Manic Street Preachers' lore, which is quite interesting.
In that particular line, you know, that only the fiction, I'm so sick and tired of being for real, only the fiction now has the appeal, which there's a lot of lines in there I'm really proud of, because...
Oh, I hate middle age, but stuck between acceptance and rage.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And that is, I think Postcards from a Young Man was definitely a celebration of nostalgia. It really was like, we'd given it one last shot. You know, we put every bit of melody, every kind of anthem left into this album. This is much more, it's not nostalgic, it's actually saying, God, I wish I could do most of it again, because it's never going to come back.
Well, you never know. Jesus Christ. God,
like
I wouldn't want to be in the dressing room at half time if I was losing 2-0. You as my manager. Jeez.
But no, because there's a kind of tenderness to the life we've led, which is just, you know, it's been, while sad, immensely enjoyable. And, you know, as you get older, you realise that you become the guardian rather than the participant.
It's interesting, though. I mean, right at the beginning of the album, you talk about, you know, I don't want my children to grow up like me. And then sometimes when I think about the Manic Street Preachers and the life you've had, in many ways, there's all these wonderful things. You know, going to Cuba, spending time in South Korea, or, you know, I just think, wow, you know, if anybody could have had the kind of career trajectory, if you want to use that kind of terminology, you've done so many exciting things.
It's just that line that really applies to me in particular. It is, you know, I think... It was quite a problematic line. Some people seem to think it was just wrong, but it's just me totally admitting that there's some faulty genes in my kind of hateful, spiteful mind that I don't really want to inflict on my children. I just want them to be generally kind of happier and less questioning of every single thing than I am. You know, it leads to a more peaceful life, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think it's quite a universal thing. It's kind of like between a lot of blokes that they don't want their kids to be like them in many respects.
I mean, I'd like to take them the odd good part of me, but I just hope I don't pass all the bad stuff.
Yeah. If they can enjoy the feather boa, then that's enough. This is Builder of Routines. It's Manic Street Preachers, X-Posure, XFM. You're listening to X-Posure on XFM. I'm John Kennedy, and with me tonight are Nicky and James from the Manic Street Preachers, and that was them with 4 Lonely Roads featuring Kate Le Bon, a different side to the Manics, because none of them sing on it. Well, you might do some backing vocals. Do any backing vocals on that, either of you?
Yeah, there's a bit of me, because the kind of original demo I just put together, and it was, again, originally I was chucked off, basically. Another one of my songs I was chucked off on. But no, I never had any intention. The interesting thing is on the deluxe version of the album, you get all the demos with all the different, you know, whether it's me singing or, you know, blah-de-blah. So it's always quite interesting to listen to. But lyrics just came from an old A.E. Housman poetry book I picked up when I was on holiday in Tenby. And I've realised now that I regurgitate so much just quotes or books or poems that I've read. Certain lines just crop up subconsciously in my lyrics now. And I'm not sure which one's doing this, but I know that's what inspired it. It was designed around The Two of Us by the Beatles. I'd always been desperate to write a kind of lolloping sort of song like that, with, you know, great warmth to it. I think it's one of the more kind of hazy, half-awake sort of songs on the album. It's got that sort of groove to it.
Yeah, kind of, you know, when I first heard the demo, it reminded me of really well-played beat happening. Kind of like, you know, but with a more classic edge. And I'm not being nasty beat happening because, you know, I love beat happening. I just kind of, I couldn't really remember when we'd been that gentle. And like I said, that hazy before, you know. And it's because I think it's because, you know, why I had this image of doing something like that, the two of us, etc. And he'd completely and utterly gone in his own direction. And all I did is, put the bass in it.
So there's an amazing bass on there, actually.
The bass sounds great. I was wondering, so that's James playing bass?
Yes, it is, yeah. And we were swapping around instruments the other day in the studio, and of course, he got my acoustic when he was doing Falling Roads. I had his bass, and I tried to stand up, and it was right down to my ankles. I really looked like, a bad replacement member in the Circle Jerks in 1982. Because I had shorts on and everything.
Social distortion.
Yeah,
but yeah, but it was obvious we wanted another singer. I'd always sort of had a feeling that Kate LeBon could sing on one of our songs, and there's just a kind of pure folkiness to it on this, which really works. It kind of adds it's the cut-in clarity against that kind of haziness of the track. There's something really again, and she did it in LA, Kate, and she sent sort of 3 takes over, and it was easy to do. And at the start, you can just hear her walking up to the mic in her high heels. I'm not sure if she wanted me to keep that on, but it's just a lovely thing. She just walks up and then just goes straight into it. Again, at the moment live, I'm singing that, so be warned, Manics fans.
That's weird, but whenever Nick seems to write a tune, he always seems to write songs that are just much more fitting for female voices. Because Nick wrote the verses in Your Love Alone Is Not Enough kind of thing, and of course Nina sings a lot of that. This as well kind of thing. It's kind of, he seems,
my feminine side.
He seems to be much more comfortable writing in that kind of mould. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And fantastic to hear Kate LeBon on a Manic Street Preachers album. Such an amazing singer. And it would be great if you had Richard Hawley and Kate at the same gig. I mean, that would be amazing.
It might happen. Been an interesting bus, Lucy Rose, Kate LeBon, and Richard Hawley on bus.
Could be quite full on.
Could be a lot of drinking.
Yeah, I think so.
Actually, I want to go on that bus instead.
Can I book a seat on the bus? It sounds like a great night out. I Miss the Tokyo Skyline is the next song. And how did this come about? I mean, this again seems to be new territory, I think, for Manic Street Preachers.
It's really kind of, James had done a beautiful little kind of acoustic. It didn't add up to a song at first in the nicest possible way. And
it was, yeah.
James went upstairs in the studio for an afternoon nap, both sort of exhausted from children and stuff, and we just said, Sean, go and put some bleeps and noises, go and have a fiddle round, make it sort of some sort of electronica, and he just 4 hours later appeared with headphones and boxes and leads, and said he tried to recreate the sort of feeling of travelling on the bullet train and the sounds and the speed, and
it is, it is quite nice. It's, that is always the impression you're left with when you leave Tokyo. It's such an amazing mixture of old and new. And they never seem to kind of aggressively collide with each other. Always seems to fit with each other. And it's kind of nice that Sean approached, the undercarriage of the song in such a modern way, because the top of it is just my voice and an acoustic. And I wasn't sure, like Nick said, I wasn't sure whether he did add up to a song when I did the demo. I think this is one of the earlier ones as well, and I just kind of tossed it aside. I just thought it might be a B-side or the Japanese extra track. But they made it in the end, so that's cool.
And I think it is a new step for us. There's no Manics track that's ever sounded like that. It's kind of odd concoction, sort of stray violin, an undercarriage of I don't know what, because Sean, there's about 24 tracks of Sean fiddling. No bass on there, which I'm always happy. It's another song off for me live.
And is that violin? It sounds like a Japanese instrument on there, but it is a violin. That's
no, it's something
Japanese.
we concocted in the studio ourselves, just kind of like through various samples and stuff, because it wasn't the richest kind of Japanese talent pool in Cardiff kind of thing. So we meticulously kind of like recreated things from samples, from sound samples, and just took a long time to make it sound real.
Wow,
But I do like that idea of the modern and the old, because if there's one place that I would recommend to experience that, is we've got such a deep connection with Tokyo, from doing Motorcycle Emptiness video there 21 years ago, and getting our first gold disc ever before the UK was the first time we went to Japan, and
it's our first taste of Manic Mania in a strange way as well, wasn't it? And when we just arrived there, I think we were playing Closer. When we were Closer by Joy Division, when we were being driven into Tokyo for the first time. And it was just one of those moments where everything seemed in slow motion, because I think The Eternal was playing the first time we ever arrived in Tokyo. And we were all just completely hypnotized by the neon and kind of like the daily hustle bustle of the Japanese kind of like worker going to work, and all kind of the traffic signals. Everything was just the biggest culture shock, Full Valley boys could ever have. And it's always just stuck with us. We've been kind of hypnotized by Tokyo ever since, really.
And this is it, Manic Street Preachers. I miss the Tokyo skyline. XFM. It is Manic Street Preachers with I Miss the Tokyo Skyline from the brand new album Rewind the Film, which is out this week. We're giving it the X-Posure album playback treatment. I have Nicky and James from the band talking us through it track by track. I'm John Kennedy, and the next song is Anthem for a Lost Cause. So what can you tell us about this?
This is this is James's lyrics on this. It's the one track which I'm always pushing him to write words, and I think this is the best lyric he's ever written, and in a typically perverse way, it's actually really complicated as well.
No, I was I was scrabbling around, trying to find an extra song on the album, and because I thought he was missing something. And the song was initially called The Composition Rights. R-I-T-E-S, obviously. And Nick said, why don't you call it Anthem for a Lost Cause, which is a lyric in the song anyway. And it was just a song it's just a song which talks about the futility of perhaps trying, the futility of the song, basically, that how perhaps, will somebody who's 15 ever have their God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols moment ever again? Will they ever have their kind of White Riot by the Clash moment ever again? Will they ever have that moment where you don't believe the hype, or Fight the Power by Public Enemy ever again? Will we ever live in a time where those songs, puncture, the cultural landscape, and they stand in the same place as the greatest novels, the greatest films, some of the greatest journalism, some of the greatest painting? Will songs ever arrive at a point again where they actually stand along all those other cultural signposts and tell you about the times you live in, and actually perhaps make you resist certain things in your time? Because I can't remember the last time a song really did that, really. So that's what the song was about. And, the first line, it's Cold and Lonely Message at the end of the song, was just about you and the times are changing on the radio, early in the morning. When I was trying to write the lyric one morning, I was thinking, God, at the end of the day, that song gave so many people so much hope. But the actual last words of the song is the times are changing. And if you translate that to now, kind of like it doesn't give you much hope. So that's the way
And you think I'm miserable.
That's the way my kind of messed up circuitral fried head works.
But I think, for me, listening to the whole album, the hope is that these are songs that will appeal to another generation, that you don't necessarily have to write songs that will motivate a 15-year-old boy in a bedroom to pick up a guitar and try and change the world through rock and roll, but you can write music and write songs that speak to your own generation at whatever point they are in the transition of their life.
Of course, yeah, and that's kind of valid and everything, that's cool, but it's just, slightly strange that, I want to hear a song by a really young band that was about, the last few wars we've been through, or the last two, economic crashes we've been through. I want to hear like an 18-year-old kind of like, demigod come up with a song to define those things, but it doesn't happen, does it?
I think, like...
Maybe you just haven't heard them.
I know, but that's why it doesn't sit in the cultural landscape.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit alongside a film or a book or a painting.
I think that's what we're saying. Like I love Savages this year, and I think their lyrics are incredible, or really interesting, really intellectual. But it's that idea of a band like that just crashing the mainstream is that just seems impossible now. Not a band, it doesn't matter who it is, wherever. I love Jake Bugg's album, and I think his lyrics are really kind of stimulating. But I'm just waiting for that eureka moment where a song has impact more than just for fame. Because there's always good music, Britain, and there's me and Jim buy, there's 20 albums a month.
This week I bought Georgia Ruth, I bought the new White Hills record, I bought the new Little Lara's record. I'm not saying I don't still love music, it's just when it absolutely just punctures the ether of the ghetto it's in, and it just affects everybody, and it doesn't seem to anymore.
It's like the first time you saw Morrissey on Top of the Pops, that moment really, which is hard anyway because everything is so dispersed, but there is a platform there for someone just to have something more exciting than some idiot at the front of the stage banging a floor tom going, whoa, whoa. And then the ticker tape moment, and everyone looks into each other's eyes and smiles and goes, "Isn't this a fabulous moment? Isn't this great?"
Let's get back a message. This is going wrong.
No, these are pertinent and important questions to ask, and they're in song as well.
But you're right. There is out there. Those people are out there.
No, I'm just thinking, say, on a political level. I mean, a band like Enter
Plan B did it.
Plan B, but a band like Enter Shikari motivate and excite
they
people
do it in their own
and stimulate
terms.
people in their own terms.
But say the Plan B song, I don't actually know if that's allowed into the kind of like into the big cultural grandstand like it used to be. I don't know if it's allowed in anymore, kind of thing. And it was a great record.
People are much more interested or kind of sort of beguiled by the thought of the kind of fake authenticism of Mumford & Sons, because it makes you feel comforted. That it doesn't ask any questions. It just kind of pushes you into a warm feeling of everything's all right.
I don't know. I think their lyrics are quite searching. They're always
about what?
About love. They're looking for
God.
but
we got enough songs about love.
But
Jesus.
Yeah, but you need them. You need both, don't you?
What did love ever solve? Well, didn't solve an economic crisis.
Your beloved Beatles wrote loads of songs about love.
They also wrote Revolution.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I agree. You want a bit of both. And
yeah, but we got too much of the other, I guess.
Yeah.
I got nothing against them anyway. It's not. I'm just. They're the best purveyors of it. They're brilliant of that kind of. Picnic tablecloth Cath Kidston view of Britain.
No, fair enough. I think there are people out there and there are songs out there that do connect, but maybe they don't get the platform that connects in the way that you're talking about, James, which is puncturing through and kind of changing the world in effect, or hopefully changing the world.
Well, at least trying.
Yeah. At least I kind of I do there were certain moments like it just I was very lucky to have those moments, even though I was too old to actually understand what God Save the Queen actually was going to mean to me when it was released at the time. It still affected me, in the kind of like in the mid-80s. And, The Queen is Dead by Morris, by the Smiths, it just had a massive effect on me. And there it was massive. It was big.
Yeah, we did have a lot. And you can add Paul Weller and Billy Bragg on top of that.
Yeah.
And they were all getting massive hits as well as trying to put something in, which was just outside of your normal range of thinking. I mean, music's been the greatest music and TV has been the greatest educators. I might have got a degree in politics, but I've learnt much more outside of that.
It's such a great topic of debate, and so much something that can inspire endless conversation. If you have any input, if you've got any ideas, any contrast to this opinion, get in touch. john.kennedy@xfm.co.uk. Do you have any anthems for a lost cause? This is Anthem for a Lost Cause. It's Manic Street Preachers on X-Posure, XFM. Manic Street Preachers, bitter old twisted Welsh freaks are back. Their own description while that song was playing. Anthem for a Lost Cause. It's terrible. It should have come out of you. But yeah, they are back, and it's good to be asking these questions. I think it's funny when these kind of conversations start up. I always feel I'm meant to, when somebody makes a statement, you've got to respond with a contrasting statement, even though you might necessarily particularly agree with them. But it's anthems. I always thought, do you know Oxygen by Willie Mason when that emerged in the early noughties? I always thought that would be an anthem for a generation. And
Woody Guthrie kind of way.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't quite become the international #1. I thought it would be, but, it's only 10 years ago now.
Well, the lyrics, the record bought, is it Drenge? How'd you say it? The lyrics are great on there. It's pretty rough rock and roll album.
Yeah, that's
But there's a lot of real, as soon as I heard the lyrics, it just kind of attracted me. But after listening to it, you almost think, well, it's almost too much for people. I can't see people just wanting to process that kind of attitude.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way. I mean, I love Savages, like you, and I was watching them on the TV, at Glastonbury or something like that, and I was sat in the comfort of my living room with my wife, and she was saying, I'm not really in the mood for this. And I was thinking, but this is amazing. Brilliant. This band is incredible. And she likes them. She thinks they're good. But it was kind of 10 o'clock at night. And
They've always got to be in the mood for stuff.
And it was like, I'm not really in the mood for this. But at the
I don't
same
think
time,
the country's in the mood for it.
I could see her point that maybe other people aren't going to feel that same excitement that I do about what they're saying. And
I mean, we get tired of being like this. The album is about the Sullen Welsh Heart. I can't fight this war anymore. Time to surrender. Time to move on. I feel like that. I'm just, at the end. I don't want to be saying these things. I don't want to pass this on to my children and all that. But I just wish someone would kind of come and do it for us.
But kind of, Anthem from Lost Cause wasn't actually written as a criticism to a generation. It was actually just saying, God, no one's ever going to have those moments I had when I hear the Queen is dead, And I just, that's just a sadness. That's not even criticism. It's just like that rallying call, that perfect rock and roll kind of iconic moment seems to have gone. And kind of that's just sadness. It's not criticism.
We shall see whether James is right in the fullness of time. As Holy as the Soil is the next song. And it starts with a little bit of Cat in Beefheart speaking to us.
It does, but unfortunately we had to remove that.
Oh, no.
Which is a real sadness to me, because the whole song, the genesis of that song was inspired by that. The kind of sense of despo loss and anxiety that is on there. But we were not allowed clearance for the album, which is a real shame. The song itself, I think it's the oldest song. We started off as a demo I did on a piano maybe 4 years ago. It's as close as a kind of lamenting love song to Richey that we'll ever write, really. It's pretty blatant in the lyrics. And, as holy as the coffee you made for us, and as holy as those nights we walked in the rain, just walking back from a nightclub in Swansea, 5 miles, getting absolutely pissed on, but feeling really good. That song is also is kind of about people we've lost along the way. Particular friend of mine, Jim, who passed away a few years ago, who was our product manager, and Philip, our manager, and it just felt like a pretty honest call to anyone who's ever felt that sort of loss, which obviously is the one thing that unites us all, is losing someone that you really care for.
I think it's a great song. I think it works in so many different ways. I mean, obviously you have those specifics that inspired you to write it, but it could be a single, really. I think it should be a single. It's such a beautiful song in many ways, but it also kind of brings a soul side to the Manic Street Preachers. The Impressions or Curtis Mayfield or things like that, has that kind of feel to it.
Well, I think it was a song that Nick had lost a bit of faith in, and then he was playing it in the midst of these sessions. He was playing it again in the studio. And I probably hadn't given it a fair crack of the whip. First time I'd ever heard it, a while before that, and I immediately just heard kind of gospel-esque kind of backing vocals behind it, which is what I attempted to do, kind of thing. Behind Nick's voice in the verse, and then when the chorus comes, and it was just, I remember he was just playing it as I was leaving to go back to my house one day, and it was just like a little epiphany. I just knew that it was going to be on the record, because I just heard the backing vocals in my head, and I just realised that it was just one of those things, kind of like that it just grown in its own time, and it was just ready to be on the record, and it's probably my second favourite song on the record, I think. and it's kind of strange to sing. For like, Manics, one of the Manics to sing a line like, we could save the world is a strange thing for us, It's not the kind of magnanimity we kind of usually use in a song, I don't think.
But then you do follow it up with, even if it only lasts for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it still feels slightly warmer than
you were always
than
perturbed
we
by
usually
that.
are.
You thought it was like a line from Take That. I remember you saying.
No, I know, but kind of like just even the notion
I'm
of it.
happy with.
Even the notion of it in one of our songs was just strange at first, but I love singing it now, so it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think the horns was very much. I was really into a track called "It Stone Me" by Van Morrison all the time. I was obsessed with the kind of horns on there, which I really. When the horns, Sean Reid, who came down and did most of the horns on that, I was obsessed with them, sort of keeping out of the way of the vocal, and like all those great soul records where it's never interfering, but it's a part in itself. And I think it worked really well. Just again, it's one of the more uplifting tracks on the album, I think. And unfortunately I've got to sing the verses live, which again is a noose around my neck.
I'm looking forward to hearing it live. I think that sounds fantastic. As holy as the soil, it is Manic Street Preachers on X-Posure, XFM. It is X-Posure on XFM. I'm John Kennedy, and that is Manic Street Preachers with 3 ways to see despair from the new album, Rewind the Film. I almost said from the new film, Rewind the album. 3 ways to see despair. In a way, this is the closest bit to kind of rocking out on the new record.
Yeah, which just goes to show how rocky the album is.
Yeah. There's a big solo.
It's kind of reserved for me. Come on. I mean,
it's the best solo that George Harrison never played.
Or Jeff Lynne. I'm more of a Jeff Lynne kind of guy, really, aren't I? But
I think it's a bit Dave Gilmour on that.
Very good.
Anyway, I think it's one of the classic things of this lyric. Nick gave me the lyric, and I didn't. I thought the lyric was about somebody else. As to what I have subsequently found who it was about, and so that's kind of nice, really. Sometimes when you're working on you kind of misunderstand the lyric and you go your own way with it. I don't know if it would have changed the musical direction of it if I hadn't made that initial mistake. But it was when we were doing the demo for this song, which became the master. Really, I realised how different we started approaching this record, because it was so slow. But I couldn't make the song any faster and make it feel comfortable. It was just, everything felt like there was a kind of there was a mournful kind of moon death dance going on. And whenever I tried to speed the demo up, it just didn't work. And I realised that we'd finally arrived at this direction where kind of like, we were very much in the groove of this more kind of like, melancholic acoustic bass thing.
And I remember when I first heard it, I felt it kind of sounded like the White Album with Steve Albini in charge of the drums. It's got a grunginess to it that sort of just goes with the sedateness of this amazing vocal of James's on there, and that guitar solo which just stretches out like a sunrise, just stretches out, and it's a really kind of heavy track in a good way. Reminds me, maybe could have been on This Is My Truth in its sort of slowness, but I think I was inspired by a picture of Stuart Adamson. I was just reading Mojo and reading the kind of the last days of Stuart. We're huge fans of Stuart Adamson from the Skids and Big Country, to be honest with you, the first 2 albums. And it was just that idea of, which you can relate to loads of people and loads of situations, of just how things kind of escalate in your life and you can lose control. The song's not necessarily about Stuart. It's just that idea of how from things being so right can go so wrong so quickly, which I think everyone can relate to, that if you just, it doesn't take much. The miracle of humanity is that we actually are not all sitting in a park drinking alcohol, really. The miracle is we managed to sort of get it together. Hands in the air. Come on.
12 new tracks in the Manic Street Preachers.
3 ways to see despair. Only 3. The Manic Street Preachers. But Stuart Adamson, I mean, those guitar sounds that he created sound incredible,
genius.
don't they?
Just
still
pure genius.
No.
Just kind of, I think John Peel actually described him as the Scottish Jimi Hendrix, didn't he?
He might well have done,
which was really nice, you know. It was kind of, because the Skids, no one had ever sounded like him before as a guitarist, and that's kind of undersold in kind of rock journalism sometimes. You know, people fail to actually identify and recognise something which is completely unique, because no one ever sounded like Stuart Adamson before or since, and that's just pure originality. That's just unique talent, you know. And I love the way that kind of, you know, you had the foil of Richard Jobson and Stuart Adamson, 2 completely unique kind of, like, you know, a guitarist and a completely unique vocalist and lyricist. You know, to actually go and sell lots of records with those 2 component parts was just a massive achievement, you know, just brilliant. Just
it's also that feeling that, you know, Stuart, you know, somehow managed to sort of survive and get through the bad times. You know, a reformed Skids with all the original members would have been headlining festivals everywhere, because it came, obviously, when Green Day came around and did a cover of Saints Are Coming and stuff, and all of a sudden the Skids became really cool again. And it's just a shame that he's not here to kind of witness all that love, I guess. And you just, you know, one chink in your arm. And we've been around so many circumstances. And myself, as a completely frail and fragile human being, you just know sometimes that one little thing is going to start a chain reaction. And it's kind of hard to claw it back then.
It's tricky. Running Out of Fantasy is the next song. It's just quite funny thinking 3 ways to despair, running out of fantasy, and the 2 of you laughing at your own misery is pretty amusing.
Well, I find, I mean, this is one of the older. This is probably the second oldest song on the record. This was done before the O2 show, way before it, I think, actually about 6 months before. And I actually just love these lyrics, just absolutely, just, you know, the seduction of a fading power in the hotel room in the middle of nowhere. It's just, you know, brilliant lines. So I see those lines, and of course I know, you know, the overriding arc of the song is about, but I just get excited about seeing those lines and just the way they're written and what it adds up to. And it's a strange phenomenon where you can have a song that potentially can depress the listener, really excites the author when he's trying to write music to it. You know, I don't get those feelings of depression or melancholia when I'm trying to write it. But I remember I was depressed when we finished this in the Berlin session, and Nick obviously didn't come out of that session, as we talked about earlier. And then we brought this version back, and he went, "Yeah, I really like it. It's like Indie Adele." So I was kind of depressed then.
That was meant in a good way, though. You know, it's just, you were matching her lungs. But the fantasy of the lyric within the lyric is just. I think I wrote that in Cambridge on the postcards too. I started writing that. Been watching Burden of My Dreams, the Werner Herzog documentary, and I think in it he says, in a German accent, which I can't do very well, but, you know, I'm running out of fantasy. He's in the middle of the Peruvian or Colombian forest somewhere, and it's all going wrong. I think he's filming Fitzcarraldo trying to pull a gigantic boat up a mountain through a forest. And it's just that idea that, you know, I don't know if I can sustain this disbelief of wearing a leopard print skirt on stage anymore, much as I'd like to, and I genuinely would love to. And sipping champagne in between songs and all that. It was just that. And it was also, I was reading this absolutely brilliant autobiography of Jan Morris called Conundrum. You know, the great kind of travel writer Jan Morris, who used to be a man and had his sex change in, I think it was in Morocco in the 70s. And just the fantasy of Jan, or James, I think it was James before, had always wanted to be a woman, always felt it within him. So just also the comparison of that fantasy changing. So those 2 elements, a heady mix of pop genius.
12 songs that I'm actually
But the funny thing is, I mean, you keep commenting on the depressing nature of some of these songs, but listening to the record, you don't get that sense. You don't get, it doesn't bring you down and into a dark place at all.
It's not that kind of internalised Holy Bible catastrophe. It's much more, I think a lot of people can relate, maybe not in such an extreme way, but experiencing all those situations that are on the record, you know, especially as you kind of, especially people who've grown up with a band, you know, everyone's reaching the same kind of plateau of the hinterland before you can just get a 50 and not care, do Marlon Brando, 20 Stone and just hate everything. There's this weird kind of hinterland in between where you're not sure which way to go. Are you still young enough to be what you want to be? Or are you too old? You know, I think that dilemma that everyone faces in their mid-40s, really.
It's a kind of dilemma that particularly is heightened by being in a rock and roll band, I think, as well, kind of thing. But not in other art forms. You know, I talked about it before. You know, a lot of people were very much more interested to read, you know, a lot of Philip Roth's novel once he'd got past 50. And, you know, and Lucian Freud, as he got older, you know, people saw something else in his paintings. But with music, you know, there's always the questionable nature of people saying, should he still be in a band? So kind of, by analysing it, you kind of like buck that trend a bit, I think.
I mean, I can't wait to...
Because you realise there is still massive reasons to be in a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
But I guess, is it an indulgence? I guess that's how you question, you know, is it always the domain of the new, really? Is it an indulgence for us to still be doing it?
Does it? Well, does it necessarily have to be? Nick Cave and the Bad Steeds, it's still making amazing records, still putting on fantastic performances, and as are your good selves. You know, I think Rewind the Film it could end up being a pivotal turning point in what you do. No.
Yeah, I guess trying to grow up a bit gracefully is what I'm trying to say, and I think everyone has to do that in their normal lives. You know, I don't think that's exclusively about art forms. I think everyone gets that moment, you know, the looking in the mirror moment. Might be a bit more extreme in these lyrics, but it's that, you know, should I still be playing five-a-side on a Friday night and turning my ankle? Or should I maybe pack it in?
Excellent. Running out of fantasy. Manic Street Preachers, X-Posure, XFM. It is Manic Street Preachers with Manabia from the new album Rewind the Film, which we've been playing you in its entirety with James and Nicky, talking us through it track by track. Such an interesting contrast to the rest of the record, and I think it's pretty uplifting.
I think it is, yeah. I mean, kind of
and it seems to work well going into 30-Year War, because it's almost as if an instrumental inspired by a castle ends up with a kind of strident vocal refrain at the end, which leads us into battle.
Well, it is almost like
that.
It's almost like the ghosts turning into reality, because, you know, there's a ghostly feel about Manabia as a track, definitely, and that is because of the title. And it, you know, kind of this song had a bit of a convoluted kind of birth, because it started out as this little kind of gentle blues thing I was doing. And then I just put it to bed because I lost faith in it, and then Nick kind of resurrected it from in the studio and said, you know, why haven't you started? Why did you give up work on this? And number one, I didn't have a title, and then he decided that it was going to be called Guardians of the Secret, which is a bit of a scary title. And then kind of he hit upon the notion of calling it Manabia because it's one of his favourite places, and I've been there, not as much as Nick. And kind of like, you know, and that immediately made everything come to life in the track. You know, I found a direction for it. And the theremin, you know, kind of got added to the track, etc. And it was, sometimes it's just a relief to kind of not have to sing now and again, which I've been doing quite a bit of in this record. Yeah, there's a release. There's a release sometimes when you kind of like, you all feel as if you just sculpting towards kind of like, you know, something else in the lyric, and I like that.
I think it's if anything sums up really us as a band is the fact that and our love of kind of words and the way we view things is that the title just made the song come together. You know, it gave it direction, and just that thing, it gave it the mystery and the isolation and the sense of wonderment that you get if anyone has ever been to Manabia.
So Manabia is a Norman castle in West Wales.
It is, yeah, and like I think Virginia Woolf wrote To the Lighthouse there.
Oh,
it's only a small castle, but it's not rare, but you walk down from the castle and you come onto this most amazing beach called Shrinkle Haven in itself. Probably the best rock pools in West Wales. And
George Bernard Shaw as well.
I think Jonas Bernard Shaw went there. Gerald of Wales, who wrote the first history of Wales, was kind of born there, if I remember rightly. And it's not the greatest or grandest castle. It's just, idiosyncratic and just odd and strangely uplifting.
It's a great bad weather place, isn't it? Because I've only ever really been there when the kind of waves are crashing in. It's just really ghostly.
It's a big surfer place now as well when the waves come in, but just that song was going nowhere, and a title just... I mean, I didn't play on that song. I had nothing to do with it, really. But I was saying I think the title should be Manic. And that's the way we kind of trust each other to work a lot. That something as simple as a word can kind of transform.
It's kind of, if we can go on about some of the more introspective moments on the record. But, I think with Show Me the Wonder and to a certain degree, As Holy as the Soil, Manic, some songs actually come out of love. They do. You won there, John. There's
a shock headline tomorrow.
There's a
James
raging
Dean
battle.
Bradfield admits love aspect to Manic Street Preachers.
There is the battle of hate and love going on. The hating half of me has won the battle easily is it's one of the keen lines. But there is, it's the... It says it all, the front cover, really, just the idea of, you don't know where you're coming or going sometimes being with us. Are you going home or are you leaving home? It's, and there's that constant state of flux, which it's difficult to navigate sometimes. The Sturm and the Drang, the Storm and the Stress.
But with 30 Year War, the last song on the record, it seems as if we do know what direction you might be going into, and in that this seems like the fight is back. So at the beginning of the album, you're tired and sick of the war, but now you've kind of pepped yourself up a bit with all these other songs, and you're ready to fight again.
Well, I kind of, this, again, was probably one of the last songs written for the record, and when I got this lyric, it's probably still one of those moments where I get most excited, because that's, you kind of have this deep down feeling that it's one of the reasons why, we still exist as a group, for this song, for this lyric, and, obviously, this, no one else could probably write this lyric except Nick, I don't think, or so got this song and just very excited about it, but I was worried that it wouldn't fit on the rest of the record. But then it became a bridge to the next record, so it kind of does fit in a way, because it's the last track on the album, and it's a very political song, in terms of its history and its present, and kind of it just suddenly seemed to work. It just did.
And do you have an album for a title for the next record? I mean, are you at that
the
point
working
yet?
title is Futurology,
right?
Which is a word. I haven't made it up like some people think.
And if 30 Year War is talking about class struggle being the essence of the problems with the world, or if I'm not over...
I'd say it's probably more specific to the UK. I think it's quite... In that sense, I didn't really want to give the lyric to James because I just felt people might think, it's not him banging on again about class struggle and, the kind of the establishment. But there has been an establishment coup over the last 4 years, from the monarchy, and then Eton has filtered down and kind of regained complete control of power structures in this country. That's how I feel. Which, like I said, I wasn't sure whether that fitted on the record. But it just felt like it was this more futuristic musically, and kind of, like you said, it was lyrically a kind of signpost to still feeling the same way. And it does filter through to the next record, which is much more post-punk, jagged, European, Germanic, and quite nasty.
And that will be out next spring?
That's the plan.
Yeah. Excellent. I like a band with a plan. And who plays the horn at the beginning of...
Sean. That's Sean.
So that's Sean.
Yeah,
what instrument is he playing? Is it a trumpet or a bugle?
Just a trumpet. I mean, Sean used to play in the Glenning Colliery Brass Band, which was Glenning Colliery was obviously the pit in our area. And so that is the sound of Sean. They're the kind of notes Sean used to play when he was young, kind of a Christmas kind of charity concerts outside of supermarkets and stuff and everything. And I'd go and take the mick out of him and things. But kind of, it's kind of, there's nothing worse than wasted talent, and we're always like telling him to play his trumpet kind of thing, and it just came through.
Which usually gets the response, I've been drumming for 20 years, I gave up that a long time ago.
I haven't got to get my lip back in. You think you just pick up the trumpet? You think I just... all right, okay.
But it works because, I'm seeing this as a marching into battle kind of song. And it's interesting with all the different kind of drum machines going on. There's a lot of different things going on in 30-Year War.
Yeah, there was difficult genesis of the song. Yeah. It was kind of stripped back and almost Sally Army you were looking for at one point.
And that went wrong.
But then I think once we freed ourselves up a little bit and thought it could be this, I love this idea of certain songs being a signpost to the next album. They all seem to come into place then. Sean put a lot of stuff on there, and I wanted this Blade Runner sort of keyboard. And then Jim sort of what do you reinterpret on the little acoustic bit? Keep the red flag flying, isn't it?
Yeah. It's kind of like, obviously the Socialist, the Labour Party anthem, I suppose, really. That pops up after the second chorus, which nobody has noticed yet.
No, certainly not Ed.
So I just had to put it out there. But, yeah, it's kind of... I don't know, I just... if you do talk about the futility of being a rock and roll band at the age of 44 and somebody says to you, why are you still doing it? Well, my answer would be this song, because nobody else writes this song. And that's not a challenge, that's not putting it out there, that's just kind of... I'm just saying that's part of our reason to exist when we do a song like this, I think.
And long may you continue to exist, I say. Thanks so much for coming in. Great to chat to you again, and fantastic new album, Rewind the Film. It closes with 30-Year War. They're ready, they're back. The battle is on.